Love is blue and vast, how can you forget? Infinite, ever expanding, blue and green, and one of my favorite bass lines, blue in the tide, endless, timeless, above and below me. A blue that breathes and laughs and cries, a blue with an end and a beginning, longing, reaching, bellowing, undulating, blue in solace and uncertainty, blue in forgetting, remembering all the things I've wanted to tell you, blue in gentleness, a deepness with no words, in places I cannot reach, a blue in the last time, dreams of blue floating, surrounded by a cool blue night, crystal, water, true blue, leaving is blue.
We're here at Love is Blue, a solo exhibition by Muyassar Kurdi. Thank you everyone for being here and joining us today on this occasion. Muyassar, Maya, would you like to just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background, and we can get into the work more, but just to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Muyassar. I am an interdisciplinary artist, born and raised in Chicago, based in Brooklyn. I work across various modalities in painting, movement, sound, performance, film photography. And this exhibition is my first solo in New York City. We are here in East Village at the legendary LaMaMa Gallery. Yes. This is what's happening right now.
Okay.
We're situated in the middle of all of my large-scale oil paintings that incorporate a lot of movement and gesture and sound.
We're in a room surrounded by many different types of your work, not just these oil paintings here. We also have the Polaroid images, we have graphic scores, we have photography and film and writing, so we're really surrounded by you and your work right now. So it's really special to be here as a dear friend of yours, and I'm Anna Lustberg, by the way. Hello. We are good friends who have worked together in the art world, and Art Jones is another artist and dear friend. And
Legendary.
yes, legendary, yes. I think it's really special to be here in this space, really being able to take in your work and get such a deep view of all that you do. And even now, when you described the paintings and incorporation of sound, I think that would be really interesting to, like, just one interesting thing to start off with talking about, the incorporation of sound into these visual works. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that and how these paintings came to be in relation to sound in particular?
Well, sound is my first art form, I believe, if I can even name it. I would say sound is maybe even my earliest memory. So I think everything I do incorporates sound in one way or another. And I also find all these disciplines connected through sound. So when I approach painting, it's always going to incorporate some sort of form, but definitely heavily created through improvisation and intuition. And musically, improv is my hang. You know? Through improvisation and sound.
When I was looking at these at the opening, I was thinking about the artist Christine Sun Kim, who's a deaf artist, and records sound and makes objects and 2D work and installation from that. And I was thinking about her because I think there's probably a way for those of us who know you as a musician, right, and someone who works with music and sound, we tend to want to think about these as a translation, which I think isn't really getting to the point of it. It's less of a translation and more of a language that's using sound, right? It's its own language, I think. And that's what makes the gestural aspects of this and the sense of motion and temporality just seem really natural, you know? So, yeah, I think that's a cool thing. I had another question about, and we can come back and talk more about sound and music. I had a question about blue. I was thinking about, and Anna had asked you about people that had blue periods, and you said, well, there's Picasso, of course, and Yves Klein, blue, and then Miles Davis, kind of blue, and Derek Jarman's amazing film, blue, and probably a whole bunch of blue. It occurs to me that maybe blue is maybe the most significant color that's cited in art, you know? So I was wondering if there was a particular association for you.
Yeah, I think blue is just a color I gravitated to. I was obsessed with it, that's all I did. But I definitely, when I named my show Love is Blue, I was thinking about Dorothy Ashby's song, Love is Blue. Dorothy Ashby is a jazz harpist. But I was also reading a lot from Derek Jarman, and I don't know if you're familiar with his book on color theory called Chroma. He has a chapter on every color. Derek Jarman also has a film called Blue, which was the last film he made before he died of AIDS in 1994, where it was just a blue screen where he narrates over it. He was blind when he made it. He was blind. But I was heavily inspired by his take on blue in his book called Chroma. So, but blue is something I see in my mind. So I think about the vastness of blue. And as humans, that we see blue every day, but we take it for granted. So.
Yeah, from the poem, when you read it aloud, and from the first time I read it, I really was thinking about vastness and depth, and it's a beautiful way to describe that, right? And I love that we've talked about blue in the art historical sense as well. And in the poem Love is Blue that you wrote for the show, you also talk about memory. Or I hope maybe you can touch on that. And you just said you see blue in your mind, but you talk about how could you forget, and forgetting and remembering as well. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about that with us.
So I think when people approached me at the opening, what does it mean, love is blue? And I'm like, come to the artist talk. But I said, read the poem, because blue is a lot of things. It's not just a color, it's a feeling. And I feel like when I create feelings. Feeling is being alive. And I think this work is a celebration of aliveness, blueness in its vastness, blueness in its everything. Everyone associates blue with sadness, but I don't think this show is about sadness. I don't think it's about any one thing, but I do think that it is everything. It's blue, it's also green, but blue is a very healing color. So when I see it, I float in the water, Yeah. I float in the water. Putting it into words, and using words is just so hard, but putting it into words helped me understand blue a little bit more.
Did you do a lot of writing around or about the show prior to hanging it? Or?
So I have a bunch of writing I featured in the show that I was writing leading up to this show. I write all the time. I write and I read all the time. I have a lot of notebooks, but these were recent writings that I accumulated for like the last 6 months. Yeah, and I do touch on blue. It's a common thread. It's a common thread in these works is blue.
And the writings that are at the front of the room, I know that like they're just hung up on the wall, and they're some really personal writings, and they're really interesting to take in. And I know that Ivna, the gallery director, saw them in your house when she came over and really felt compelled to have them be a part of the exhibition, and even I think it helped in the discussions of having this show at all, in addition to all of your other work.
Yes.
So.
I remember when you first came, you were like, oh, because this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to include it in my show before you even approached me about including it to the show. I already wanted to do that. I called it the kitchen writings because exactly how it is, like in the exact order that it's in, is how it appeared on my wall, except it was taped up with artist tape, all like scattered about. And I like writing on the wall. I like writing on paper on the wall. My place is covered in things on the wall and writing and books. And that was just part of my home. I have a studio in Flatbush, and I created all of these paintings in it. And I was writing, and that was my shrine, so to say. So I really love Ivna's idea to include it in the show at the very beginning, because depending on which way people walked in, they were maybe going straight to it, and it was this very personal thing that led up to so many other waves. It's very personal, but that's the point. That's the point of it. I have nothing to hide. It's all out there. I love documenting myself. Photography, whatever, self-portraiture, but the writing is, well, not only so therapeutic, but it connects me to my other selves. And to put things into words, as much as I am in a fight with words constantly and trapped in their dualities, I feel when I write, I really put it out there, and it's very personal. It's like the deepest things inside of my soul that I can use words to describe. But when words don't do me justice, I turn to sound, because sound, I think, is the highest form of consciousness, because is there a because? It's the heartbeat. So when I think about sound, I think of the heartbeat. I think of Milford Graves and his take on sound in such a rebellious way too. Because I'm self-made. I never went to music conservatory. I never went to art school. I could never afford art school, So being an artist was something I was always this way to express, because my background, especially, this wasn't always encouraged, and society as it is, doesn't encourage imagination, because imagination is power and imagination is freedom. So a lot of this exhibition is me just coming out of myself, of my layers, of my masks, and I'm just coming out, and I'm like performing myself into being. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, there's so many ideas that I'm touching on, but I have to really focus on maybe one thing, and those words, just one part of it, but it's helpful to have words, to put a name on it, because it's confusing to exist in this place.
So is it fair
You
to
feel
say?
me?
Is it fair to say there's an aspect of the work that you could say was shameless?
I would say the whole damn thing is pretty shameless to me. I think part of who I as a woman, I feel like this has always been my zone. I've always been coming out of myself and decolonizing myself, and all this shame, all this self-hatred, because all this racial trauma that you have to deal with once you're older, and it's like different things, different layers to it. But creating is my way of breaking free of those shackles. So the shamelessness, the shame that I was grown up feeling, because the Arab world, my father's side of the family, the patriarchy was so heavy, so deep. So growing up as I was his daughter with his mother's name, his Palestinian mother's name, and like I should be born a boy. That's preferred. So I'm already existing and not wanted in some way. There's this shamelessness. It's the only thing I can be to break free of that, to counteract that energy of, how can I say? How can you live with shame? Honestly, like, how can you?
Then you're not free. And there's a lot of finding freedom in this exhibition and through all of your work, breaking free from society. I mean, you talk about it in the film that's back there too. And this is, I don't know, just to bring it back to the blue quickly in the depths. What I'm seeing as you're speaking right now in these paintings is the colors like breaking out of the depths. And love is not just sadness and, you know, darkness. It's also so many amazing feelings. But I feel like when you're speaking, I see the colors bursting out.
It's joy.
Yeah.
Because I'm interested in joy. Yeah. It's also spiritual work. And when I say that, I'm going to refer to a book I recently read by Jamil Kosoko. They are a Nigerian dancer and poet. They describe spiritual work as the labor of reprogramming one's own infrastructure, which I find very relatable. I do find myself making and creating as an extension of my spirituality, one that's grounded in community and healing and decolonizing, reprogramming, of course. So when I create, I think that this is an obsession. I'm gonna put myself in a trance. That's what this is. Because when I paint especially, it's so meditative. It's one thing that I do that I can just do for hours and hours and not stop. Not stop, but just, oh my God, I can just do it forever. I love it. It's so meditative to me, and I just become consumed by it. Just totally consumed. And much like sound for me, honestly. So.
How much of that do you think is translated, say, through a medium like painting? I mean, I think I definitely can see the freedom or the attempt to kind of break out and be free in these, but I'm as interested in the fact that we're, you know, as artists, we're limited by the formal limitations of the material, like canvas is a frame that contains this stuff, right? And you're speaking in such an interesting way about joy and trying to achieve this transcendent moment. And I think it sounds really performative. And as a performer, I wonder, so to be the asshole, I'd be like, well, why shouldn't these be musical pieces? Why shouldn't this be a performance?
Oh, right. And you could maybe even say that about my graphic scores.
All right, I'm going to say, why shouldn't that be a performance? Well, it makes more sense with the graphic scores.
Well, everything is a performance.
That's
like
too pat.
Like,
that's way too pat.
Existing in a body is a performance.
I reject that.
It's talk in interaction. That's a performance. You ever? Oh my God, it does seem like I'm so neurodivergent that it all seems like a performance to me. You know, you feel me?
How much do you want me, as the viewer, to understand the experience you had making it?
How do I want them to feel?
I mean, it's a better question. How do you
And
want them to feel and
understand.
understand? Yeah.
I can't control how they will. I hope that people feel blue. I hope they just feel alive. It's alive.
I'd like a little more, if you don't mind. Because my blue isn't necessarily your blue. And I came into the show feeling alive. Thank you very much. And that sense of aliveness is augmented by seeing the work. So that's what I want to hear more about. You know?
Wow. Yes. Can you ask me the question again?
No, I can't remember.
Because I forgot it already.
It was more about, no, I mean, we're talking about how you want people to feel, and you said, well, I'm not responsible for that. That's what artists always say. But that's not my question. It's how do you want me to feel, maybe? And it's a range.
I was feeling all the things when I created these things. I was feeling my lowest of lows in the winter time in New York. And my highest of highs. But you know me, it's low and high and low and high and low and high. But it was all of the things. I can't escape myself. So I created these things as a way to feel like I am contributing to society. Here, I hope this makes sense. I will create, or I will jump out of the nearest window.
So I mean, that's the kind of the necessary aspect of making it. Like you make it because you have to make it, right?
Yeah, there is no choice.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, I know because I know you personally, that aliveness for you is really important and special, that it might not be to other people. So I don't know if you're even comfortable sharing that experience. You don't have to, or even where that comes from, even if you glaze over it. But aliveness, I think, for you in particular, is really important to all of your work and what even maybe led you to being an artist.
See how Anna knows me? She knows me like that. No, I had a near-death experience, so I feel like after, and this is something I talk to people about at the cheese plate at the dinner party, because I'm always one of those people, like I bring up crazy shit anytime. I like to go straight, penetrate the heart, go straight there. I'm not here for fucking with shallow waters, you know. But I'm like, I died once, and wow, really? Yeah, I can talk about it. I don't care. There's a lot of things about it that makes it make sense. Like, this is my obsession with embodiment is so directly related to my experience after my head trauma, where I had to relearn how to walk, talk, eat, function from 0%. So it's different to be alive a second time, and I feel like I'm just hyper aware of how I exist in my body, and I'm always thinking about my feet and its relationship to the ground when I walk, because I have to sometimes think about what it feels, how to walk. I have to think about it to do it, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm interested in memory, because it's also related to that experience where there was a relearning of coming back to myself mentally and physically and spiritually. So being alive, yeah, I could have said that earlier. Being alive is a curse and a blessing, but mostly a blessing, because I'm just looking at the things. They're good.
For anyone who's ever experienced your performances as well, I think that your joy of being alive really shines through in the sounds that you make and that you improvise with other musicians as well. And I actually don't know how long you've been doing music prior to the accident. So I don't know if that was in your life beforehand or if it came about after, but there's a lot of joy in your performances, I think, and it really makes you aware, anyone who's witnessing it, aware of our presence and how you, just feeling in that moment. It's a lot of catching you off guard and kind of rattling.
Yeah, because I'm not here to be consumed. I'm not here to be a spectacle. So I have this whole idea about when I perform, I like it to be an experience that we experience together. So it's something I want to feel present with everybody in the room. And I'm always thinking about the audience-performer relationship, but I'm not here to do the same thing. It's improvisation, and even this one thing's my solo stuff, and other things are my collaborations with other projects or collaborations with other musicians. But I think improvisation in general is connection, because you have to listen, and to listen, there's so much at play. It's one of the most beautiful things I could think about is improvisation. With a lot of my friends over the years, a lot of free jazz musicians, a lot of experimental musicians, where we listen to each other. We communicate in a different way. If I perform with Daniel Carter, he'd come over, I'll make him lunch, and I won't add salt because I know he high blood pressure. So we'll cook. He eats real well when he's at my house, and he loves my cooking. But he'll just talk about history forever, just talk and talk and talk, and then we're just rapping. He calls it rapping. We're just rapping, and then he'll break into song, and it's so funny. We'll land on the same notes at the end, and then start talking again, and it's just this beautiful connection. It's a relationship, and it's a give and take, and I love all of these experiences with musicians where we had to really be present with each other, really be present. The music can't happen unless you're present and you're listening. And it's like giving only when you have something to give, not forcing it, So it's careful, it's listening. And so I'm constantly practicing deep listening, It's a skill, and I, as a self-taught artist, I have to listen because that's how I learn music. Because I don't read traditional music notation. I used to when I was a kid. I grew up taking piano lessons from the organ player of the Baptist church that we used to attend. And I lived a crazy life, and I went to the mosque with my father, and I would listen to cassette tapes of Jordanian music in his car, in his van, rather. It's funny. That's how I learned music. I learned music in church and in my dad's van. But
So the artist Christine Sun Kim that I cited earlier says, let's listen with our eyes instead of just our ears. So can you give me kind of a way into how I might listen to this painting?
Well, that's a great question. Much like the graphic scores, which were actually performed, the graphic scores over there were performed at Roulette Intermedium for my artist residency concert. It was a trio with trumpet and flute, electronics and piano and voice. I would say that everyone's going to have their own interpretation of it, but it's definitely speaking on cadence and tonality and harmony and dissonance. I love playing with jazz music, free jazz musicians. I have friends that perform music notation, but also you give them anything, and I'm like, what, make sound from this, you know what I mean? Just make sound happen. Just make sound happen, you know?
I went to your performances at Roulette this past year, 2 of them, and they were both trios, and I think it was interesting that for your solo residency, you chose to utilize that performance space to do a trio each time, both times with different musicians. And just since you were speaking about it, I thought we should talk about the graphic scores, at the entrance of the gallery. Visually, they're so good, and I'm really just curious, especially as not being a musician who does, you know, improvised performances like you do. But how do you just give them this other, I don't know, visual language or different language for reading and understanding music from these graphic scores? Like, can you just break it down a little bit so I can understand? Because again, visually, I'm very into them. And you had them projected as well at one of the performances.
It's some similar question to what Art just asked me, right? You could read it however you want. Tone, cadence, rhythm, with the flow, what's the feeling? Also, what's just the feeling? When you look at it, what's the feeling? There were also words scattered in Arabic. And I guess it helps playing with some of the best musicians in New York City. You can put anything in front of them, make sound happen. How do you see this? How do you feel it? It's not always, it's not a cerebral thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's an inner thing. They're bringing their hearts to my work, and they're interpreting it however they see it, given the information that they see in front of them, right?
And yet you've titled each work.
Yes.
There's a title written neatly across each one.
I sure did.
Well, that's a good point. That there's structure, right? There's a structure there, and a lot of musicians who use visual notation, right, for graphic scores have an alphabet, right, that they use that's kind of consistent across the scores that they have. So I'm wondering if you have a set vocabulary for your visual notation, or if it changes maybe from piece to piece.
It changes from piece to piece.
Tell me a little more about that.
And I think it would be, if they were performed again, they would be different. And I'm not interested in anything being the same again. I'm not interested in repeating a performance. It's one of those things, you're there or you're not there. You're there in the present moment, seeing it happen in real time, or you're not there. And I guess you could experience that now that we have video of everything, but it's more of a here and now moment. Nothing could be repeated again. But it's a feeling, and it's always a feeling. But this is an exercise in feeling, because I feel it all. But honestly, a lot of people don't feel. So it's like, wake up. That's what it is. It's wake up. Wake up and smell the coffee.
What do you want
My
me to wake
goodness.
up? What do you want me to wake up to?
Wake up to, oh my gosh, where do I start? Wake up to justice, you know? Wake up to love. Wake up to togetherness. Wake up to softness, resistance, gentle resistance. Wake up to anger. A lot of people don't like to be angry. If you're not angry, I'm concerned. I hope you're angry, because whatever's happening outside, that ain't right. So, gotta be angry, but use it in a way that serves you. Much like Audre Lorde taught us all in her bit on anger. Anger is a tool that we can use to empower ourselves. So I feel, I don't walk around angry. I laugh a lot. I'm very joyful. You know, I get angry. Trust me, I'm a New Yorker. I get angry. People walk slow in the streets. They don't know where they're going. But I practice kindness, right? Okay, but anger is a place where we can start with moving towards justice and liberation of all people.
Anger is an energy, says the Sex Pistols.
Pardon me?
No.
Can we talk about the photography as well? I mean, You said sound was your first art form.
People always like to really, they like, what's your favorite? What's your favorite? What's your favorite? I'm like, I hate that question because I love it all. And
I didn't ask you that.
I
For
know.
the record, Hannah, she hated your question.
No, but also like, yeah, it is my first. I did say it myself that music was the first, and I will say that because I'm also saying the music is the heartbeat, and that's what we all know to be our first sound. The mother's voices, the mother's words, the heartbeat, right? Everyone's connected to sound through their native tongue. I know when I hear Arabic, it's like connected to my DNA, you know? So sound is a deep, deep thing for me, and that's why I said that. But I find all of these, and I started with sound, and I started with visual photography, but it all led into each other, and it all came in its own time. It all came in its own time. But people like to ask me what my favorite is, or what's the first thing I ever done, or I don't know. I think first and foremost, I'm a poet. Maybe not even with words, but I am. It's just a way of seeing the world. I think that I've always been a poet. And much, very interested in my liberation. In my liberation, for sure. Because I think at a young age I became radicalized, just given my circumstances growing up. So I think at one point or another when you're young, you do realize like, oh, my parents have no money, and you know, certain things are a certain way. So it's a vibe. When you're young and you realize that money exists and people suffer, and it's hard. Whew, I can't, I'm too sensitive. Oh my goodness. I feel like I've always been interested in liberation because of my situation at home, where I was like trapped between cultures, between my mother and my father's side, and also growing up in Chicago, often feeling like I had to side with my whiteness because of the hatred towards Arabs, especially after 9/11. So I feel like as a kid, I always like sided with my whiteness to be safe, but then I hated the other part of me, which was always like that for years and years, until I became old enough to really understand it and own up to it, and also learn the language better, and really get down with who I am, you know?
I mean, is that how you came to use analog photography to document yourself, or just is it just like, I mean...
Well, documenting myself, part of documenting myself is to have control of my narrative. Because I think so often that people like to tell us who we are. No. I like to watch my body change too. I just do. I've always been doing nude photography, especially, always. I like being naked. I do. I'm beautiful. I like being naked. I like being, even by myself, being naked. Like, it's beautiful. It's just a body. Man, people put taboos on everything. It didn't turn out to be my father's perfect Muslim girl, you know. Far from it. Far from it, because I love pleasure, freedom. I strive towards what's just and right, you know? I'm not going to live in a place that doesn't let me exist as I am, how I want to be. So there's definitely a lot of reprogramming that I'm doing. Thankfully, I have a great therapist. Dealing with so much racial trauma and the reprogramming of, you know, what the white hand has fed us all these years. especially as women that do all the emotional labor for everybody else, and we don't get paid for it for free. We do that for free. Wow. I'm going to be exactly who I want to be. I'm going to say exactly what I want to say. And there's really no other way for me. There really is no other way. My father doesn't even talk to me. He hasn't talked to me in like about 6 years. I don't care. It's an artist talk. Fine, whatever. It's in my writing. I talk about it. But it's like, it's just, I'm going to be who I'm going to be no matter what. You might not want me in your life anymore because I am becoming myself. I'm still trying to find my authentic self, always trying to peel back the layers, because like even I hide from myself, you know what I mean? But it's like, that's silly. Like, why would you hide from yourself? Because at the end of the day, other people will abandon you, but why abandon yourself? You know what I mean? It's like, I deserve better. I deserve better. So this is a body of work that over the years have filled me with a sense of empowerment, a sense of just shamelessness, so much shamelessness, so much. And I love the writing by this Egyptian feminist author, Nawal al-Saadawi, who actually was one of the main inspirations behind the graphic scores that I performed. That really, she writes extensively on women in the Arab world. So her stories about her upbringing and everything in between, it was just fascinating, very triggering. So I was like, wow, this is very relatable. I think I've had this exact experience, being the daughter of an Arab. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. It's like I am many things, and whose job is it to say who I am? And like in the end, it's constantly changing. It's like I'm so many women inside, so many voices inside that want to come out. It's a lot. It's a lot, like dealing with the world, and mental illness is a thing. So I've had my fair share of mental illness. Like, I'm not here to pretend like anything is happy-go-lucky with me, but like I've been able to find a source of joy and a reason to live. And I feel that so hard right now. So being alive is like, it's like so great. Like I wouldn't want anything different. But this is after years of not wanting to be alive. You know what I mean? And so aliveness is different for me, Art Jones. It's a blessing. I'm so happy to be here and to share space with you all today. So, it's a very personal exhibition. It's very personal. That's the point. I just want to open myself. Yeah, and hopefully people will be able to feel seen in their own experiences. I think the way we connect to art is we as an artist, I want the viewer to feel seen. I want them to feel like they belong. And so to answer your earlier question, or maybe just to add on to it, I hope that my viewers feel a sense of love when they see the work, because I find myself speaking for people sometimes that maybe don't have they're not in a position to speak, or maybe they don't want to, because many people get silenced. So part of this is breaking my own silence, and through the works, I hope that people feel seen.